Civilized nations require a ruling body to supervise and guide its citizens and maintain peace within its lands. They would come to rely on them to manage the upkeep of the territory and provide prosperity and security from any lurking danger. Without such organization, chaos would reign and people would only suffer as a result. It's imperative that they have principles and the nation in mind when enacting policies. This is to preserve the integrity and trust of the people they govern. With that said, there are also nefarious entities whose goal is to corrupt this principle, twisting the ruling power for their own ends, only to enrich themselves and them alone. They don't care about how they would negatively impact the people around them and will use any means necessary to reach their goal, no matter the cost. One such entity infests the kingdom of Midgar. They rest in the seedier parts of this domain, wriggling their slimy tendrils on every facet of society. No means are beneath them if they get what they want. They seek immortality that would enable them to dominate the world. And for them to achieve this goal, they have to revive a demon lord who once terrorized the lands. They call themselves the Cult of Diablos. So what is the Cult of Diablos? What are its origins? Who are its members? Why do they need immortality? And where are they now? This enigmatic cult has put fear into the hearts of those they control, and they will not stop at nothing to gain eternal life. If left to their devices, who knows what the world would be like if they are in charge? This is the story about the shadow elites in the underbelly of the Midgar kingdom. This is the story about the demonic cult known as the Cult of Diablos. Throughout their entire history, the Cult of Diablos held dominion over nations. They've long existed since ancient times, but little is known about their history. Despite being this elusive, they've maintained their reach through its members who sat on many positions of power in various kingdoms around the world. They've carefully concealed their existence as they covertly operated throughout the world to manipulate global affairs, maintaining their shadowy grip on society. Those who intend to expose their existence meet their swift end, and the cult will resort to any means to silence them. Their gluttony for dominance knew no bounds. It's second nature to them to grab power and use it for their own ends, even resorting to demonic powers to gain it. Since its founding, they poured all their resources into research, seeking to understand the demonic powers of the demon lord known as Diablos. Despite the demon having already perished, its remains were still potent in magical essence. To sustain their power, the cult devised a method of cultivating Diablos cells from the remains of the defeated demon. They harvested the demon's life energy after taking its blood and flesh to create a potent drug called the Tears of Diablos, granting incredible strength and magical power to those who took it. While these red pills might grant increased power and boost the capabilities of the consumer, its drawbacks whittled away the user as its potency was too great for the human body. The pills were imperfect and continuous intake of it would eat away at the user, deteriorating their health. To continue their research, they would abduct orphans from various races. The experiments involved implanting into the test subject cells of Diablos. The body would react to the Diablos cells, causing them to mutate, making drastic changes to the subject's physiology. If the subject's body rejected it, cancerous growths would build up on the body, decomposing it at an alarming rate. The process would be an excruciatingly painful experience to the victim. Most wouldn't survive this process and end up as expired failures. Any survivors would be recruited to the cult's legion of brainwashed soldiers who only listened to their bidding. An unlucky few managed to survive these horrendous experiments. They were known as the three heroes, one human, one beastkin, and one elf. In folklore, they were the heroes that slew the demon lord Diablos and granted peace to the land. Olivier, the elf hero, managed to cut off Diablo's arm. In reality, this myth was a ruse as these heroes were controlled by the cult to defeat the demon Diablos. The heroes were successful experiments who managed to be compatible with the Diablos cells. Instead of being killed, they were granted power on par with the great demon. They became tools for the cult in order to harvest more cells from the demon Diablos. The cult extracted the severed left arm and drew much of its blood to continue on their research and perfect their demonic pills. This resulted in the creation of the Pearl of Diablos, which were only available to the strongest elements of the organization. These pearls would grant immense power, vitality, and high levels of magic power, essentially granting immortality to those who consumed it. However, with a scarce supply of Diablos cells, only 12 of these pearls were produced a year. Only 12 of the high-ranking members of the cult were qualified to receive it, hence creating the Knights of Rounds. In order to maintain a continuous collection of samples for their experiments, they required blood from the original 3 heroes who defeated the demon Diablos. They decided to corrupt the story of the 3 heroes, rewriting history and painting the heroes as responsible for the demon possession. Descendants of the heroes were then persecuted and hated by the masses due to the lies and deceit the cult had weaved. In effect, no one would suspect anything if any of the descendants disappeared, whisked away to be lab rats for the Diablos cult. Joining the cult entailed being born into it, or worse, invited by them through underhanded means. They wouldn't take no for an answer, and would rather end their prospecting recruit than give any chance of exposing the existence of the cult. A handful of their agents have been shown to have once been decent people, but have been long broken by the cult into joining their ranks. The Holy Church, which ruled the religious sect of Midgar, were under the influence of the Diablos cult, with the upper echelons being members as well. The rest of the church and its believers remained innocent and oblivious of this fact. One of the notable attempts of abductions by the cult was the kidnapping of Claire Kajanu. Suspected of having the demon blood, agents of the cult seized Claire the night before her first day in Midgar Academy. It was tipped off to them she was suffering by an unknown ailment, suspected of demon possession. Another was Alexia Midgar, a princess of the kingdom, who's also said to have the Diablos blood. A member of the cult was to obtain her under the guise of an arranged marriage, to prevent raising suspicion, as the agent was also part of the kingdom's royal guard. They managed to capture her and underwent multiple experiments, leaving her drained and anemic. Blackmail wasn't beneath the cult as well. When Viscount Grease's daughter was afflicted by demon possession, they never hesitated to abduct the child and coerce the Viscount into cooperating with the cult, offering him a guarantee that they would keep his daughter safe and be cured of the curse. They reneged on that promise and subjected his daughter to terrible experiments, leaving her a deformed, mutated creature due to the progression of the curse. Grease was powerless to stop this and continued to be the cult's pawn. The cult knew no ethics or empathy for their victims. All they desired were dominance and power. They would do whatever it took to obtain them, even if it meant trampling over the innocents. Neither did they care about Diablos himself, as they only wanted the demon's power, despite naming a cult under its peerage. For them, Diablos was just a tool as well in their quest for immortality and world domination. Despite all this, they weren't a monolithic entity either. Over the decades, the cult had fractured under the lines of the 12 Knights. Each of them created their own factions and would impose their will to try to get ahead of each other. This power struggle had hampered the coordinated unity required for the cult to functionally operate. Despite that, each faction is a force to be reckoned with, as previous attempts to confront them went fruitless. Until shadows hunted shadows. A rise of a new unknown organization threatened the cult of Diablos' plans for world domination. It came in like a tidal storm, halting their progress and neutralizing their cells one by one. The cult wasn't prepared for this, as they've always been the dominant force for the longest time. With their fractured state, they failed to mount a meaningful counter-offensive against this strike. Multiple cells of the cult went dark. Critical of all, their research facilities were destroyed beyond repair, ruining years upon years of research data locked within. Shadow Garden had severely paralyzed the cult. Thanks to Shadow and his agents, the cult of Diablos has been weakened and their power waning. The remaining cult factions were now forced to put down their differences and reorganize to respond to this looming threat that appeared under their noses. For them to survive, they have to figure out how to take care of this thorny group of upstarts, else their plans for world domination would only be a fevered dream. At the current state of the cult of Diablos, they would have a hard time recovering from the damage done in the shadow war waged by Shadow Garden. With their members scattered, resources dwindling, and no meaningful head at the helm, the cult will slowly crumble unless a strong leadership pulls on the reins and reorganizes. With their momentum severely lost, it may sound easier said than done. Time will tell if they bring themselves back up or collapse under the might of Shadow Garden. But for now, this is the story about the corrupting grip of a nefarious shadow cabal. This is the story about the slow destruction of the cult of Diablos. Thank you for watching Isekai Dork. A quick reminder to click like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more Isekai lore and weapon breakdowns.